And welcome back to Ben the Devil's Morlock. Welcome back to Ben 10 the Devil's Morlock. And welcome back to Ben 10 the Devil's Morlock. Now, if you're here, you have obviously seen Chapter 1. If you have not, then there should be a playlist down below. If not, then check my channel, because sometimes I will actually put it down there, and sometimes I will not. Now, like I said, this chapter is going to be a bit of a long one, so please brace yourself. And I will be cutting away throughout this because this will take such a long time to do. So you may hear a bit of a, beep or something along those lines because it will take so long. Alright. It has been 3 weeks since Ben has got his 2 books from the salesman at the flea market. In that time, Ben has surprisingly been able to read the 2 books that he has got. But Ben has reached a bit of an impasse, as he has found that it's been real hard to actually keep up the spells that has been in the book. Now, these 2 books has actually only had right around 5 basic spells through them. The rest are actually theories on how to actually control them better, but Ben had, like it said, has been having problems with it. So, now that the 3rd weekend has actually come about, Ben is now going back to the flea market, as this is the literal last weekend of the actual flea market before it actually does shut, where Ben is hoping that he will be able to find the salesman. Let's begin. We see Ben Tennyson. Why did he put a space there? In the actual walking through the flea market. As he looks through his left and his right, he is heading back to the same way that where the stall was last time. And surprisingly, the actual stall is actually there. More so, the actual stall looks like it hasn't been touched or changed since he was last there. None of the books were off or anything else. The only difference was, well, there seemed to be a stack of books in front of the actual stall, almost packaged like they were ready to actually go somewhere. As Ben got close, he heard a cough behind him. He turns around and, well, there was the actual salesman again. Sam something, if he remembers his name right. Hey. I was, just come by and saying thanks for the book. They were real, interesting. The man looks down at Ben with a smile on his face. He said, "Boy, you don't have to act like you don't know what was actually in those books. I know what was in those books." And yes, believe it or not, I was actually the one that wrote them. This actually left Ben speechless, because he wasn't 100% sure whether or not the actual man knew what he was selling or not. Of course, hindsight, this man did seem like he was not fitting in at all. But to actually hear that this man wrote those 2 books that he read, the man then said onward, "Let me guess, you are having a hard time actually controlling your actual magic itself. You're capable of doing the spells that are in the books, but you seem to be running out of steam, right?" Ben was actually speechless. This man actually knew why he was coming to him. The man moved behind the stall and said, "Well, I kind of guessed that you would actually be back, because every time I've ever sold books, sold my actual spells or anything else, they've always came back. The draw of power is always too great for people to actually deny." Ben actually says, so you actually have something for helping me?" The man smiles at Ben, says, "Well, these books right here aren't set out for no reason." Ben looks at the books and was actually a bit taken back because altogether there was about 10 of them. Not just the fact is that there was 10 of them. No, each book here was right around maybe 2 inches thick and without a doubt a good 6 to 8 inches long, with them being about 10 inches tall. There was no way that Ben could actually afford these books as it was right now. The man kept on smiling and says, "Oh, don't worry about the money. Trust me, the actual pocket change that you have in your pocket will be worth more than enough. I know I don't look like it, but believe it or not, I am getting on up in age, and I do want to teach somebody my skills and tricks. Not to mention, I can tell by you, boy, that you have something in your eye. You can, without a doubt, become a very great magician, magic user, sorcerer, or even a morlock of astounding power. But it all will have to start from here. Whether or not you go forward is your own choice. But know this, sometime in the future I will ask for your help. And you will have to help me. Now don't worry, it ain't going to be something awful like me telling you I want to take over the world or anything like that. Trust me, each time I ever come to someone, it's always been a personal problem because some people don't know when they need to leave me alone." Ben thought about it for a few seconds. And he's like, and he actually thought of it some more. And, well, he finally came to a conclusion. As long as it wasn't something truly horrible and it was always in defense because someone was coming after him, then there was obviously nothing that should be a problem with it. Ben looks back up at the man with a smile and says, "Okay, how much would this actually cost?" The man looks back at him and says, "Well, your parents gave you $5 today, and you still had the $10 from last time, correct? Just give me those, and I will give you these books." Another thing that you might want to know is that ring that you are wearing, you need to actually put on your other hand. Same finger, just other hand, and it will work a lot better. Matter of fact, there is another ring that's in one of those books there. Now, when you read these books, make sure you read them correctly. There is Roman numerals on the sides of them. And make sure you read them correctly in that order. And do not deviate in the slightest, or you will be sorry. These books are not kind. They are meant to teach you how to control magic. They are not meant to teach you simple parlor tricks like the last one I gave you. Do you understand? Ben was taken aback by this. To actually know that there was going to be consequences if he did not follow his orders. Now, what these consequences were, it was unclear to him, but it was obvious by the actual man's voice that it was not going to be too pleasant for him if he actually decided to deviate at all. Ben nods to the man and hands him the money. Ben picks up the books, or tries to. The man says, "Hold on a second." He outstretches his hands, and a glowing light actually appears over the books. As he did this, Ben looks around. And as far as Ben could tell, no one was actually paying attention, almost as if they weren't actually there to begin with. The man smiles at him and says, "Illusions, a very helpful thing to actually accomplish. Now, be on your way, boy. I'm sure your parents will be interested in why you have actually bought these. Don't worry, because they won't be able to actually tell what this is. It'll be some video game or something along those lines." Ben nods and picks up the books and actually runs off. As he does, he doesn't actually see the man standing there, suddenly growing two gigantic angel wings. The man flaps them, and a frump of fire actually bursts from him, actually consuming him and the books around him. But as the fire dies down, no one is actually wiser, almost as if he wasn't there to begin with. It has been quite a few months since Ben has actually received the books from the strange man at the actual flea market. Matter of fact, so much time has actually passed that Ben's actual birthday has actually rolled around, which Ben was not too happy about, because this summer he was actually incapable of going with his grandpa on any trip, or actually has seen his grandpa this summer. As it turns out, something actually came up, and his grandfather was incapable of taking him and Gwen anywhere, which put a real downer on it, because he actually wanted to show off his magical abilities to his grandfather, and to actually show his know-it-all cousin Gwen what he's capable of doing, because he has been keeping it secret for the past bit, hoping to actually surprise them and shock them. But unknown to him, his father and mother actually were currently going to get his actual present, and they've seen that their son was actually interested in these books that he was buying from this salesman up at the flea market, which they were currently heading to. As they drove, they were actually driving away from the flea market, as they actually stopped by there for a little bit, and where the stall usually is that they seen their son go to, it wasn't there this time. Instead, there was another person there. He actually told them, and said person actually told them that, well, the actual owner here wasn't actually here, and currently he was just packing up the books, as they were actually going to stop selling books here because they weren't making enough money off of it. They asked the person precisely where was the actual store, and he gave them directions. They currently kept on driving until they actually got to a bit of a pickle, because the place that they were driving to was actually an old district in the factory section of the actual city that they lived in. This place has been shut down for the better part of, as far as they can remember, ever since they were kids. And there didn't seem to actually be any buildings, or at least stores, nearby, because, well, no one was there. But as they stopped driving, they came to a, oddly enough, a small shop that seemed like the actual building used to be, I don't know, some type of lunch hall. Sorry about that. I'm getting over being sick. As they have actually stopped by, this place looked like it could have been someplace, I don't know, lunch hall or something along the lines where the workers actually ate. So they got out and actually went in. As they actually entered the place, it looked, well, like a bookstore. Only thing is that the actual walls and everything else was actually covered in books. It wasn't just aisles. The entire place was covered. Matter of fact, books were stacked here, there, everywhere else. They approached the front desk, but before they could actually ring, they heard from the back room, "Hold on a second. I'm just getting something together for a customer." As said man walks out, he was dressed in his usual attire, which they found to actually be odd. Said man looks up at the two and actually smiles and says, "Ah, yes. I think I actually know who you two are. You're that Ben boy's parents, right?" Ben's father actually stepped forward and said, "Well, yes, that's correct. How precisely did you know that?" "Well," said man looks at him and says, well, I seen your son buy quite a few books for me over the past year. And, well, I seen precisely where he kept going. And I seen you actually walking with him a couple of times. So I just put two and two together. They stood across from the man, actually taken back by, well, his actual bluntness at it. And he says, until the actual man says, anyway, what can I actually do you for? It was actually Ben's mother actually stepped forward. Yes, our son's birthday is coming around, and we were hoping to buy him something. And it seems like he's been taking a real interest in your actual books. And, well, there isn't many bookstores that are still around, so we thought that we might as well come to you and actually saying what he was actually buying. The actual man smirked at them, almost like he knew something that they didn't, which didn't actually sit right with them, but they waited for the man to actually say anything. And he says, well, your son has been interested in a book series from a very interesting author. Matter of fact, he was a very good friend of mine for many years before he passed away. Well, at least that was the stories that he was interested in currently. The man actually says, which the man was actually telling the truth. After all, the person that Ben was actually reading from currently actually was a friend of him. What he wasn't telling them was that the books that Ben was reading actually came from the wizard Merlin himself, the actual grandson of a demon named Trigon. But neither here nor there. The man actually went around the counter and says, if you're interested, I have the rest of his book collection that he wrote in the back room. I've been trying to get rid of them for years. Altogether, it's right around, 100 and something books. But for you, I will willingly, let's say, sell them to you 50 cents a piece. This actually astounded both Ben's mother and father. For someone to actually sell their books for this cheap, it was Ben's father actually spoke up. Why actually are you selling these books so cheap to us if he was such a good friend? The man actually looked to him and said, I've been trying to sell these books for the better part of, let's see, you don't want to actually know, in all honesty. And each time I gave them away, they kept showing back up. Been getting real annoyed with them. And in truth, they are just junking up the place and I don't need them. So, do you want them or not? Time skip. Back at Axel Ben's home. Ben was sitting in his room actually reading back over the last book that was in the one they got from the man at the flea market. The one about him actually controlling his magic. The actual interesting thing that Ben always found fascinating was that while magic was a broad term, the actual energy sources could actually be divided into several different things. Chi, ki, chakra, and other mysticism forms. Matter of fact, apparently someone could actually draw power from hell itself. Now, Ben has never actually tried this last part, mostly because he's too scared to actually try it, and the book itself actually says how bad of an idea it actually is to do without preparation. But as Ben keeps on reading, he actually hears the horn blow outside of the house. He comes running, and as he opens the door, he sees his dad actually getting what looks like a old trunk out of the back of the car. He walks up to his dad, and his dad turns around and says, well, Ben, happy birthday. I hope that you're, interested in this, because we went to the person that you've been buying books from, and he says this is actually what's left of the actual person that you've been buying books from. or the series of books that you have been buying. Ben actually looks at the trunk a bit for a stupor because, well, it was a trunk. The actual thing must have weighed almost twice as much as what he did. His father waved at him and says, "Ben, help me get this into the house." As they drug it in, Ben actually opens up said trunk in the living room. As he does, he actually sees books lying in what almost looks like gold mysticism, and one actually even looks like it had a face on it. But on top of the actual thing was actually a note for him to read automatically, saying, "Don't worry about how this looks. There's an illusion over the trunk and the books themselves, so your parents should not actually be able to tell what they are." Ben looks back at his parents and actually thanks them for the actual gift, and he picks up the books and actually carries them in his room. As he does, he finds another note and says, "Open this book first, and something interesting will happen." Ben looks at it puzzledly. Something interesting will happen? Okay. I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but this guy never cast me astray so far, so I guess I will. Later on that night, it was about 11 o'clock at night, and Ben was about ready to actually open up the book. His parents just went to bed. He told them that he would stay up a little bit later reading over some of the books they got, and as he does so, he opens the book finally at the stroke of, well, 12 o'clock. As he does, the actual room seems to actually shifts, almost as if it was never there to begin with. As he does, flames replace what was his walls. He hears screaming and everything else. He looks around and, well, where his bed once stood was actually the man. But this time he was different. With a smile on his face and his eyes glowing red. On his back are two gigantic angel wings. The man actually smiles at Ben, saying, "Well, I guess it's the time for you to actually start your real training in magic." And end. Okay, that's actually the end of this chapter. It didn't take as long as what I actually thought it would. And there's only about one more chapter left, so if you actually enjoyed this story, you know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you next time, hopefully.